Yes. There it is. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Uh, Now, in the class that I'd been going to, the what do we call that thing? Faithful Families class. Um, we usually start like 10 minutes late, and we've been in here the last couple of weeks, and I think John usually tries to start right on time, but I know a lot of people funnel in a little late, and that's fine. But I am your substitute teacher today. So, sorry if you're expecting John Burkhart. Now, John last week said something about being the best speaker, the west side of Mississippi or east side, I don't remember, but I never said that, just so you know. John made that up. Not true, didn't say that. But anyway, turns out the substitute Sunday school substitute teacher gig pays just as much as the regular Sunday school teacher pay. So yeah, it's good. So anyway, this has been quite a week. I'm sure everybody's kind of got their own stories about the weather it was. I was just talking to Tyler about their trip to Bayou La Battery, and they got nothing. Every year that we've gone, and this is the first time in 4 years that we haven't gone, we've always had some kind of weather out there in Alabama. It turns out all the rain, everything was falling here in Texas, apparently. All the bad weather was here. I was going to show y'all something. I don't know if I need to turn this down or lower it. But there we go. All right. This is a tree. It's actually in our neighbor's house, but it's about 30 yards from our front door. This is a tree that got struck by lightning. This is what woke us up. What was that, Tuesday morning? Tuesday morning. So I don't know if you've ever seen a tree that got struck by lightning, but it looks like a hairless cat. I mean, just the bark. And if you look to the left, that picture on the left, there, you can see the bark laying out to the side there. But that's some wild stuff. That was very loud, a loud crashing sound, and then the floodgates came in, and I know everybody's kind of got their own electricity issues, stories, and there was people that were just now getting their electricity back yesterday. It was wild and wacky. I think we were without power for 15 hours, something like that. And it's funny because our next door neighbor, the tree that this belongs to, right next door to us, they had their electricity back probably 12 hours before we did. And we're both on TVEC, but strange how that stuff is configured. But and I saw on the thing they send out that the Mathis Scout and them got their house was struck by lightning yesterday and caught their attic on fire. But Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories. I've seen lots of damage out there on 987 going towards Kaufman. Just unbelievable, the power of nature. But been a wild week. And we kind of forgot that this past Monday was Memorial Day. That kind of got lost in the shuffle. But we had Memorial Day, and then we had the storm to end all storms, and you name it. We go all around town looking for bags of ice so we can get our refrigerated goods. We're planning on going to the Burkharts to stay because we didn't have any power. We go to 4 different places looking for ice and finally find it, bring it back to the house, start icing everything down, go out to the garage to get in the car, power comes back on. So, what can I say? That's how life goes, right? And then we just keep getting hit with rain. And if anybody needs any brush, any fallen limbs, branches, we got plenty. Come on out and get all you want, free of charge. It's a hot mess. It's probably going to take me the rest of summer to get all that stuff taken care of. But that's kind of where we are on the week that was. All right, well, John asked me to teach, came to me a couple of weeks ago and asked me to cover him this week. I said, what topic do you want me to cover, John? And he said, well, we're talking about principles of our faith in this class, essentials, fundamentals. So you really got whatever you want to talk about, whatever topic you want to talk about. So, okay, that gives me some flexibility. That's fine. There's plenty of good stuff in there. In the world of coaching, we got a lot of expressions and phrases and quotes that we use to try to get kids to understand and buy into what we're doing, why we're doing things, and a lot of good little quotes out there that help them understand. But one that I use pretty often is don't get bored with the basics. And this is to emphasize the fact that you got to constantly work on the fundamentals, constantly put the work in. You can't get to the point where you don't think it's important. It's basic knowledge. It's something we always understand. You got to constantly revisit things. You got to understand. As they say, you got to keep the main thing the main thing. But we are talking about something that's it's not deep theologically, I don't think. It's not going to be anything too difficult. It's a pretty simple theme, and that's the way I want to keep it. We'll look at some scripture, share some words of wisdom, and see where we go from there. Like I said, nothing too deep theologically. I don't want to get to the end of the class and get a bunch of head tilts like this. But there you go. All right. So we're going to start today a source of wisdom that I think we can all relate to, and that is the Andy Griffin Show. So I'm going to talk about an episode today called Opie's Hobo Friend. And I don't know how many of you are fans of Andy Griffin, but they don't make TV like this, obviously, anymore. There's some great values that are taught. But this particular episode, Andy and Opie meet up with befriend a guy at the fish know at the beginning of the show. His name is Dave Brown, and he's a transient or a vagrant or a hobo, whatever you want to call him. And Opie really takes a liking to this guy, as Andy says. He's kind of carefree, responsible free, no commitments. He does magic tricks. He tells jokes. He just enjoys life. He doesn't have to do anything. He does what it feels good to him. If he wants to go fishing, he goes fishing. He has no job to tie him down. And Opie just really buys into this. He thinks that this is the coolest thing ever, that this grown-up can just do whatever he wants to. Again, nothing to tie him down, no responsibilities. But you can start seeing that he's been a bad influence on Opie. Opie's going to start getting kind of this flippant attitude about things. He's going to start skirting his responsibilities. Starts having a real messy room. And he plays hooky one day. And of course, this is going to get him in a lot of trouble. Andy's going to come down hard on him, Andy and Aunt B. So this is very unlike Opie, and it's pretty clear that Andy is going to have to, to deal with this. He's going to have to get this new friend of Opie's. He's going to have to get him on his way. So he's going to go confront this guy, and he meets up with him. And this is after this friend of his, Dave Brown, with an E, as he says in the show, has stolen a chicken to eat, and he's taken a pie off the windowsill, one of the good citizens of Mayberry, and he shares this meal with Opie. And when Sheriff Taylor comes out to this little camp where he's at to talk about it, he thinks he's in trouble for that, but Andy says, no, that's not really what I'm here for. And the hobo is played by Buddy Ebsen. Some of y'all might remember this guy. But he's talking to him, and this guy's defending his way of life. He's saying, hey, I see things a little different than other people do. But I live by my wits. I live life the way a lot of people would like to live if they just had the courage to do it. That is Buddy Ebsen, yes. Yeah, J.D. Clement. So after he kind of defends his lifestyle and his way of living, he says to Andy, who's to say that the boy would be happier your way or mine? And then he says something that really gets Sheriff Taylor's attention. He says, why don't you let the boy decide for himself? And that's when Andy's going to say, nope, we ain't doing that. Andy says, no, I'm afraid it don't work that way. And those of you who know Andy Griffith, the way he talks, his folksyism, he says, I'm afraid it don't work that way. You can't let a young'un decide for himself. He'll grab at the first shiny thing with fancy ribbons on it. Then when he finds out there's a hook in it, it's too late. Wrong ideas come packaged with so much glitter that it's hard to convince him that other things might be better in the long run. All a parent can do is say, wait and trust me, and try to keep temptation away. Okay, so great wisdom there, and Andy even says, hey, there's a lot of grown-ups that don't understand this. There's a lot of parents who don't get this. But you've got to protect them as much as you can. You've got to tell them to wait. You've got to tell them to trust me. And at this point, our hobo friend understands what Andy's telling him, and he says, all right, I'll move on to the next town. I'm going to leave. You got me, Sheriff. And Andy also understands that that doesn't solve his problem entirely. He's still going to have to deal with this because Opie's been introduced to some ideas that are not in line with the principles of the Taylor family, the principles of the people of Mayberry. But what I want to talk about today is some of the things that Andy said right there, and that is to wait and to trust me. Okay. Now, obviously, we're not youngins, as Andy would say, but we are children of God. And as children of God, God tells us, you've got to wait. You've got to wait on me. You've got to trust me. So this concept, this ideal of wait on the Lord, this is something we've heard. This is something you see a lot in Scripture, especially in the Old Testament. And it's a wonderful idea, and it can mean a lot of different things. And I'm going to ask you what you think in a minute. But the first scripture I'm going to look at is from Psalms 27:14. It says, wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. So First question for you, what does it mean to wait for the Lord? What does it mean to you?
Practice patience.
Practice patience. I agree. What else? Because this concept, it encompasses a lot of things. And it's really essential to our faith and trusting. What else? Wait on the Lord. What does that mean to you?
Sometimes we try to force people to act in a certain way. We feel like, well, and we gotta let God work on it. Try to help God.
Yeah, you use two words there. We try to force. Okay, so that as implying we try to enforce our will, and we got to let God. We got to let Him. Essentially, kind of be like Andy Taylor with Opie there. You got to let Him make decisions. What else? Again, this can mean different things to different people. And even though it's a simple concept, it's not easy to do. It's something a lot of Christians struggle with.
Sometimes it's hard to be strong. We want to give in too soon. Do it our way. That's our way. It's our way.
Right.
Well, we can't. Maybe because we don't pray enough to ask for that. We don't have the faith to be strong.
It definitely requires faith. It requires patience. It requires understanding. It requires a lot of things. It's something we got to work on. It's something, just like I was saying earlier, don't get bored with the basics. You got to keep going back to simple things that should be part of our routine, our daily routine. Praying, thinking about Scripture, reading Scripture, how we encourage each other, the words that we choose. A lot of things go into this. Our mindset, our way of thinking. In fact, that was something in that episode I remember Andy was telling that the hobo, hey, there's something wrong with Opie's thinking. Opie's not in trouble. You're not in trouble for stealing a chicken and a pie. You've messed with my boy's thinking. He's getting blurred between what's right and wrong. So we have to understand that God knows a lot more than we do. To give up some of our control of things, it's not an easy thing to do. Let's look at some more scripture here. Now, this is all a passage I'm sure we're all familiar with. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on what? Your own understanding. Lean not on your own understanding. So, who's been in this a lot longer than we have? Right. So this is one of those passages that we should be able to recite. This is one of those things that we should always lean on, literally, figuratively, etc. But trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. All right, now these next two passages, these are from Psalms. And these are part of the, I think there's 14 of these in the book of Psalms. They're called Psalms of Ascent. Okay? And if you're not familiar with that term, Psalms of Ascent, these were the things that the Israelites would sing while they're making their pilgrimage for the annual festivals to Jerusalem. So I believe it starts in Psalms 120, maybe 119, and goes to about Psalms 1. I can't remember exactly the span there, but there's about 14 of these Psalms of Ascent, and this is one of them here. It says, I will wait for the Lord, my whole being waits, and in his word I put my hope. I wait for the Lord more than watchmen wait for the morning. More than watchmen wait for the morning. So this would be a pilgrimage song. This would be a song that they would sing on their journey to Jerusalem to one of those festivals, one of those 3 annual festivals that they had in Jerusalem. So you can picture the Israelites singing these. Some scholars also think that this would be something that the priest would sing while doing their priestly duties as far as the sacrifices. But kind of poetically, this is a beautiful thought. See the language there. I wait for the Lord, my whole being waits, and in his word I put my hope. So there's another word there that I think we can associate with the idea of waiting for the Lord. Put your hope in the Lord. Put your faith in the Lord. Put your trust in the Lord. Not always the easiest thing to do, but something that it's essential to our faith. And it's something that we need to grow towards if we're going to reach the level of maturity that we want to get to. All right, and here's another one. This is probably, you're more familiar with this one. But this is another one of those Psalms of Ascent. By the way, Ascent, geographically, Jerusalem is up on a hill, right? So when you're going up to Jerusalem, and you hear that a lot in Scripture, they always talk about going up to Jerusalem. And it doesn't matter if they're going south, east, west, whatever. You were ascending up to the holy city. But Psalms 121, 1 through 2, I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. So to me, this passage, it says a lot about waiting on the Lord. Waiting on his help, waiting on his direction. Any thoughts on this passage? I know this is one that's pretty well recognized. Design, that's a good word, definitely. And we got to see plenty of example of God's power this week, right? It's a good reminder that even though we think with all our technology and all the engineering we pulled off of, he still has control. There is no power like God's creation and nature. But yeah, that idea there of seeing God in his creation, seeing God in those mountaintops. I think it's important to understand that and to appreciate that, to value that as much as possible. Any other comments on that? I think that we're probably all familiar with some of the scripture, but maybe we haven't thought about it in the context of waiting on the Lord, waiting for the Lord. All right. Now, this John was in this scripture last week, so if you want to go to Acts chapter 9 or Acts chapter 7, verses 9 through 10. But it's right there on the screen for you. Because the patriarchs were jealous of Joseph, they sold him as a slave into Egypt. But God was with him and rescued him from all his troubles. He gave Joseph wisdom and enabled him to gain the goodwill of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So Pharaoh made him ruler over Egypt and all his palace. Now, we're all familiar with the story of Joseph, and I don't think you'll find a better story that illustrates someone waiting for the Lord than Joseph. So you look at this, and this is kind of the simplified version, but if you go into Genesis chapter 4, you can get the whole scoop. But what are some of the things that happened to Joseph? It wasn't just as simple as, hey, God rescued him, gave wisdom, everything's great. Let's go down the timetable of how long this took to transpire. So Joseph gets sold into slavery when he's how old? 17 years old. He's young, right? And we knew that there was great things for Joseph, right? He had visions. He knew something was coming. Now, Joseph was a little arrogant about it, right? And it got him in trouble with his brothers. They weren't too fond of him. They were certainly jealous, as it says here. But was it all part of the plan? Now, that doesn't mean it was easy. Do you think that Joseph, when all this stuff was happening to him, is sitting back saying, oh, well, it's all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. I'm sitting here in the bottom of the well. It's all part of the plan. It's all good. Would we be saying this is, I'll just wait on the Lord because this is going to be fine? I mean, he's 17 years old, right? So what's next for Joseph? Gets sold into slavery, winds up in Egypt, and what's the next step in this journey? Goes in Potiphar's house. Now, he's doing good things, right? Is he wavering from his faith? He's being a servant. He's acting like he understands, I got to wait on the Lord. Right? And do we know how long he was a servant in Potiphar's house? Yeah, the scripture doesn't really say, but I don't think it was a 2-week stint. And I think he was probably there for a while, just based on the scripture there. But eventually we know what happens. There's temptation there. And what does Joseph do with that temptation in regards to Potiphar's wife? Does he stand strong and wait on the Lord? Well, yeah, it's okay to answer that. Yeah, he did not give in to the temptation. Now, you think about this. You were your dad's favorite son, right? And you had all the stuff. You had this great fashionable coat. You were clearly your dad's favorite, and you had these visions about how great you're going to be. And then this stuff starts happening. Okay, it'd be real easy to fall to feel sorry for yourself, and giving into temptation, because you got to figure that Joseph had to feel deserted. And maybe he's second guessing stuff. Maybe he's saying, well, God gave me this vision, but I got arrogant about it. I should have done that. I was a little haughty, and now I'm being punished for it. Do we see that attitude in Joseph by his actions? What do we see with Joseph? Yeah, he served, and he served well. And he avoided the temptation. He waited on the Lord, right? Waited on God's timing. So, what happens next? He goes to prison. He's going to jail. Now, do we know how long he's in jail? It's at least 2 years. Now, we know that because exactly, very good. 2 years passed. Now, how long had he been in prison? We know that he was in prison long enough to have gotten the admiration and respect of the jailer, right? I mean, he put him in charge of things in the jail. So, how long did that take? Well, I don't know. But it's at least 2 years he's in jail. So, and what does Joseph do? Does he give in? Does he give up? Does he wait on the Lord? So what happens with Joseph when it all comes to fruition? Right there, right? Now, God did his part. Joseph did his part. Lord's will. Joseph's willingness to wait on him, wait on things to fall into place. To me, this is the perfect story of God working his plan and someone waiting on him, depending on him, hoping in him, trusting in him, that all things would work out for the greater good. And what is the greater good that came out of this story? He's going to save his family, right? And the story of Joseph is amazing. You know, that Genesis 40 through the end of the chapter, just the whole story of his family and the drama of it all. It's just a great story. And we see that in all things, it works out. So my next question for you is, what other stories, what other evidence do we see in Scripture about the benefits, about the providence of waiting for the Lord outside of Joseph? Does anything come to mind for you? Abraham and Sarah? A lot of waiting there. A lot of waiting there. I think you're right about that. If you just look at the genealogy of Jesus, there's all kinds of stories in there that wouldn't make sense. You're thinking, oh, well, this is the Messiah. This is the Son of God. Wouldn't everything just be perfect? Wouldn't everything just be beautiful in his lineage and all these wonderful things? Well, life is not a straight path, right? It takes us on all kinds of curves. It takes us through all kinds of trials. But it's all part of God's plan. Can you grow? Can we grow without facing trials? And there's a lot of people that want a stress-free life, right? And you know, we're blessed people. I think we can say that for sure. But that doesn't mean just this week, you know what? Our electricity goes out, and you know that wasn't, you know, the most terrible thing in the world, but it was a bit of a frustrating thing. And then when we finally get our electricity back, our ACs go out. So right now we have no air conditioning at the house, and we got John Bowmore out there working on it, and he's telling us, all these parts have been on back order since April, and we're like, well, good grief, what are we going to do? It's summer, it's about to hit in Texas. And you know how everything is these days. It's super expensive, all these parts. And, but you know what? It's going to be all right. Things happen, life happens, and the more life experiences you get, the more you understand that. But it's going to be all right. And we got to keep that in mind. Lots of good stories in there. And like you're saying, Steve, you know, it's easy for us to look at their stories and say, oh, yeah, well, they just had to follow the plan. But at one time, they were living that life. They were dealing with things on a daily basis. They were coping with these problems. They were dealing with these issues. And it wasn't just as simple as waiting it out and saying, well, it's I know it's going to work out, so I'll just wait for it to pass. And they're having to show their faith. All right, here's a verse I know we're all familiar with, from Jeremiah. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Now, we know, if you know the context of this passage, you know, you're talking about the Israelites in captivity and things of that nature. But you often see this passage, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but you often see this passage used in graduation, things, wedding cards, things like that. But this is all about waiting on the Lord. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future. And if you're familiar with this section of Jeremiah, this is repeated a couple of times. So this is important to understand. He knows more than we do. He's got a plan for us, and we got to understand that. And part of his plan, that's a good point. And that's, I guess I should have included this on my little slide. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a powerful verse. I agree. And since I didn't put it on the slide, and y'all might not have heard her, so let me scroll along here and find it. Sorry, but I think it's a good point. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Okay? To me, that's all about waiting on the Lord. God makes this promise, hey, I got plans for you. They're good plans. There's good things that are going to come from it. But then there's an addition to that, right? You will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Seek me with all your heart. Okay? That's an important part that we got to remember. Seek me with all your heart. That's waiting on the Lord. That's submitting to His will. That's understanding His providence and things. That's understanding what we are obligated to do in our relationship with the Lord. All right. Do I have any? Looks like we got cut off a little bit. That's all right. We're about to run out of time anyway. All right. So, my last illustration for y'all this morning. Have you ever seen anything like this before? This is called a crinkle wall, and you'll see these in England. Now, the reason I bring this up, you look at this wall and you're like, well, good grief. It's kind of cool looking, but what's with this design here? This weaving back and forth. I mean, isn't that just a waste of bricks? Wouldn't it have been a lot smarter just to build a wall, a straight wall? And here's the genius of this design. And I want to draw a line to God and His dominion here. Truth is, they build these walls in England like this because they actually take less bricks. If you notice the wall here, it's a single layer brick, right? One brick thick. This wall. So if you build a straight line brick wall, if it just goes straight, you can't just do it one brick thick because it's not sturdy enough. It's easily toppled. So you have to build at least 2 bricks thick, and you have to put in vertical posts and regular intervals to create stability. They serve as buttresses. But if you do it like this, it's just 1 brick thick, it's 1 layer thick, and it will hold up. It's sturdy enough because of the arch design here. So even though you look at this at first and you don't understand why someone would build this wall, weaving all over the place, thinking it'd be a lot easier, a lot smarter to build a straight wall, you get what you want. You get what you need out of this. You get this protection through this design. So well, that was my next point, Pam, so just slow down. And you're absolutely right. And that's what I thought too when I saw this. You see the path of that wall, it's going all over the place. And it's just kind of fun to look at it. But life is like this wall, right? It's back and forth. It's not straight. But that wall is a good wall of protection. All right. Appreciate your attention.